Surrender can be a difficult spiritual practice to even talk about, much less try on. It is so easy to hear the word and think of all that we stand to lose, to give up, should we even slightly crack the door to the possibility of releasing some sense of control and authority. What if we thought about trying on surrender, not in terms of what we had to lose, but rather what we stood to gain? There is a folk story that speaks to this, that is so widespread that its origins are unknowable. It is variously an Aesop fable, a Sufi wisdom story, a Jewish ghost story set during Hanukkah, a folk tale from West Africa, the Indian subcontinent, Appalachia. In my research, I noticed that it seems to be particularly widespread among the peculiar American subcultures of motivational speakers and preaching ministers. In the story, a clever hero traps a single-mindedly greedy being, whether it was a person or a monkey or a raccoon or a goblin, by offering him a treat in a jar, a pickle, a hard-boiled egg, a coin, or a candy. The greedy one sticks his arm into the jar, grabs a fistful of that treasure, which makes it impossible for him to withdraw his hand. He panics and never realizes that all it would take to gain freedom is to surrender even a portion of what had been grasped. While it may be, and I try not to be judgmental, it may be that some of us are literally finding ourselves caught in pickle jars. I think it's more likely that we get trapped by holding too tightly to notions about ourselves, false masks, old vestigial behaviors, or addictions. For instance, a huge part of my own story over the past decade hinges on my surrender of the fantasy of mastery, on giving up on the notion that I could succeed at anything I set my mind to. Surrendering to the truth of my strengths and weaknesses has helped me to be more honest and less defensive about my weaknesses and to maximize and embrace my strengths. Similarly, many who struggle with addiction and addictive behaviors find that their well-being or their sanity or their very survival hinges on surrender. The first of the famous 12 steps is to admit that one is powerless over alcohol or whatever other avenue of addiction. To admit that one's own life is unmanageable. The third of the 12 steps is to turn one's life and will over to a higher power as understood by each individual person. In the most dramatic cases, the gifts of this surrender include life itself. In less dramatic cases, they can include the gifts of a life worth living, a sense of belonging and community, healthier relationships with others, and a sense of peace and serenity in spirit. In any case, surrendering illusions that one's behavior is normal and tolerable or that one's actions are under control opens the door to a life that can be meaningful and satisfying. I think this is true also for those of us who are not addicts or alcoholics. The need to give up and surrender, I think, is present in all of us and differs in degree and acuity, not in kind. So I invite you to try it on. I invite you to try to surrender your conviction that if you just tried a little harder, you could hold down a full-time job, raise a family, and keep an immaculately clean and well-ordered house. I invite you to give up on the notion that once you've nailed down that promotion, you can ease up on the 80-hour work weeks. Bid farewell to trying to be right, or trying to be in charge, or trying to be competent, or even trying to be good. Abandon the desire to please others and avoid conflict. You may just find that by releasing some of these masks and ideas, that you find yourself with more, not only with more treasure than what you had feared losing, but that it might create openings for blessings as yet unimagined.
We want to be the people of the high hopes, the ones who keep trying no matter what, who don't give up, for we are told that those who give up are losers. And after all, the Sinatra version of High Hopes, that little excerpt of the song we heard during our Time for All Ages, was one of the Kennedy campaign's theme songs. And it's graced kids' shows from Captain Kangaroo to the Muppets. We can do this, we tell ourselves. We can think ourselves through this, we tell ourselves. We can make this work, we say. We can find a way through, until the day we cannot. I think it's very interesting that Bruce Springsteen, I'm from New Jersey, so this is an important figure, also recorded a song called High Hopes this year. And I want you to compare the words of this 2013 recording's lyrics to the 1959 version. Here's just a few words from this year's recording. Tell me, someone now, what's the price? I want to buy some time and maybe live my life. I want to have a wife, I want to have some kids, I want to look in their eyes and know they'll stand a chance. There are different expectations in our new economy and our new orders. Sometimes the new high hopes are to lower our expectations for ourselves, for the world around us, for the possibilities of everything from what we will do with our life, what difference we'll make in the world, and the possibility of how we will reconcile divisions within our own families. Whatever surrender is, it's important to realize it's not just about ceasing, about giving up. It has more variations than that. Sometimes we simply need to take that first step of recognizing that we are not the bearers of all knowledge, that we are not the only actor, and that sometimes the stage is bigger than we can imagine. Sometimes we just need to wait, to breathe, and to pause. In almost every life, I believe, a moment comes when we have to realize that something we believe essential to what we want to make happen is beyond our control to make it happen, no matter how much we might want to, no matter how much we might try. And that is when we encounter what author Richard Rohr calls stumbling over the stumbling stone. So we stumble, we wait, and we can't act because every way we know how to act no longer works. The UK paper The Guardian did a long series this week about Nelson Mandela's life and death on Friday, and in its chapters you can read the story, a progressive story, of a man who stumbled over this stumbling stone, it's clear. Idealistic in his youth, Mandela was a natural leader, and yet as a leader he kept pushing and pushing against the immovable force of apartheid, and as his civic and protest channels failed time and time again, he turned to violence. And as he did that, he was imprisoned, and in that imprisonment he spent many years reflecting anew on how power could be shared with the black majority. Because during this time, while he did other things like organizing for better jail conditions, what the pause of prison most gave him the time to look at was the refocusing lens of surrender, in which he realized that apartheid would stand unless a way for a peaceful transfer of power could be found. We encounter that stumbling stone in many more basic ways such as Andy said, my shorthand for which is trying to live the Martha Stewart life, although I take comfort in knowing that Martha Stewart herself apparently could not do this completely flawlessly. Or it might be something that has a deep vein that runs through your life, wanting to see progress in a cause that we believe in, or a church, or a family which disillusions us, or an attempt to keep someone we love safe, or to have our own body or spirit made whole, or to keep someone beloved from illness or death. Sometimes what we learn is that there are ways that we must simply be witness, that there are ways in which our surrender, our acknowledgement that we do not have the power that we wish, finds its own depth, finds its own peace. There will always be at least one situation in our lives we cannot fix, control, change, or even understand, Rohr writes. Now, he is a Catholic, and his solution is to turn to some sort of theistic higher power, which works for many of us, but leaves others still lying prone against that stumbling stone. Writer and environmental activist Jacob Needleman writes, most of us were formed by Newtonian worldviews in which everything had a clear cause and effect, what might be called an if-then worldview. All causality was clear and defined, but the truth we are now beginning to respect is that the universe seems to progress through a web of causes, just as human motivation does, producing ever-increasing diversity, multiplicity, dark holes, dark matters, death and rebirth, loss and renewal in different forms, the continual breaking of the rules of reason that make wise people look for more embracing rules and a larger logic. In the face of such complexity, thinking of ourselves as always being able to navigate life alone, to navigate death alone, to navigate all the challenges that come in between, is an act as impossible as an ant moving a rubber tree plant. As long as we think that we alone are the ultimate source of all the cause and effect, we can't be released into that larger truth. We can't even begin to look for what that would mean for us. We can't find that larger love which is part of our particular religious heritage. Without the ability to rethink, to reimagine, to reach outside our own known ways of knowing, to ask for help, to turn to the timeless questions, to ancient sources of wisdom, to a broader understanding of the way we are connected to something larger, we cannot stand anew. And we can live that way, and we can die that way. Disillusioned by our high hopes. I've watched it happen. Proud and competent people brought low when they encounter the far edge of their individual resources. And I have also seen people recalibrate, adjust expectations, reach out anew. We can keep doing what we always did even when it stops working, or we can surrender and open ourselves to new questions and connections and the truths we find when we have to admit that there is something beyond our power, that we need the support of others to journey with us, and that we can be reborn into another way of being. We might enter the way my son did 14 years ago with one eye raised in a skeptical outlook, asking, what took you so long? But still, to have the gift of re-entering, of being, of growing, of finding new connections, that, just that, is enough to transform ourselves and some small corner of our world.